Hello all of you beautiful people, Jules here for Whatculture.com, and when it comes to making a film, there is one word above all else that is absolutely paramount, and that is cut. As soon as that word is mentioned, the action breaks and reality seeps back into the project, allowing the actors and crew to gather themselves, prepare for their next take, and basically just relax a bit. But sometimes, for reasons unbeknownst only to themselves, directors will sometimes keep rolling in the pursuit of some magic shot without the actors' knowledge, and sometimes these shots make their way into the final version. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is Whatculture.com, and these are 10 actors who didn't know they were being filmed. Number 10, Michael Douglas, Traffic. Midway through Steven Soderbergh's Oscar-winning drama Traffic, the US president's drug czar Robert Wakefield heads to the US-Mexico border in California, where he speaks with a US Customs Service official while observing inspections of cars that cross the border. This scene had all of the gritty authenticity of reality, and that's because basically it was. Soderbergh took Douglas to the actual border and had him meet with a real US Customs Service executive by the name of Rudy M. Camacho. This wasn't originally intended to be part of the film, but sensing worthwhile material on the horizon, the director quietly began filming the exchange with a small handheld camera without notifying Douglas. This explains why the video quality looks markedly less clear than the rest of the film. The garish, overexposed lighting suggests that Soderbergh basically just pointed his camera and shot without setting the scene up as usual. Similarly, the audio quality is of a much lower quality than in other scenes. Soderbergh reportedly hoped that Camacho wouldn't render the material unusable by referring to Douglas by his real name, which thankfully he didn't. Number 9, Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey, Dirty Dancing. Of the many iconic scenes in Dirty Dancing, who can forget the irresistible moment where Baby and Johnny playfully flirt, dance, and lip sync with each other to Mickey and Sylvia's Love is Strange. Curiously though, this scene wasn't actually in the film's script and was originally just a warm-up exercise undertaken by the actors to get into their character before shooting. However, the director decided to start rolling the cameras regardless without notifying the pair, and considering how close the camera ends up to them, we can safely assume that they just decided to go along with it without breaking character. That one of the film's most memorable moments wasn't originally planned, and on top of that was basically a stolen take, is absolutely incredible. Number 8, Tom Hanks, Castaway. There's no denying the over-the-odds commitment of Tom Hanks' Oscar-nominated performance in Castaway, and by the actor's own admission, he more or less went crazy for real whilst playing the shipwrecked, stranded FedEx executive Chuck Noland. In a recent interview, Hanks stated that in addition to hearing the voice of inanimate volleyball Wilson in his head, he was often filmed by director Robert Zemeckis without the filmmaker shouting action or cut. As such, Hanks frequently wasn't sure if he was actually being filmed or not while carrying out his various survivalist actions. He had this to say: "That movie was literally about physical action, and I don't even recall where the camera was set up. It was just always set up somewhere because what I had to do was I had to lash a raft together, I had to open a coconut, I had to make a fire, I had to climb in or out of a cave. It was just me and the box and the lens and the behavior." Number 7, Jason Miller and other cast members, The Exorcist. It's no secret that The Exorcist was one of the most infamously grueling film shoots in Hollywood history, where Oscar-nominated director William Friedkin put his ensemble cast through near literal hell in an attempt to create as authentically terrifying an experience as possible. This extended to the director even firing guns on set in order to produce genuinely startled reactions from the cast, resulting in actor Jason Miller, who played Father Damien, verbally confronting the filmmaker for the extreme practice. But Friedkin didn't only fire the gun during the actors' takes, he even set off the gun between takes. All the while, the cast were unaware that the director was surreptitiously filming their reactions. Many of these reportedly made it into the final cut of the film. The various jolting responses when Reagan makes noises in her room were actually the result of a brilliant but unhinged filmmaker shooting off a real gun on set and legitimately scaring the hell out of his actors. Number 6, Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy, First Man. Now, First Man is an especially interesting case for this list, as it wasn't so much that actors Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy didn't know that they were being filmed, but they didn't know that they were being filmed for the movie. You see, prior to principal photography, the director assembled Gosling and Foy with the young actors who would play their screen sons Rick and Mark, and filmed 2 weeks worth of rehearsal footage centered around the actors bonding as a faux family. But what the director didn't tell the 4 performers is that he always intended to use the footage for the final film, as he he eventually did, even replacing existing written scenes. The film's Oscar-winning editor Tom Cross detailed the process. Some of that rehearsal footage replaced scripted scenes that we had of the family. Those actors are amazing with their characters in the scripted scenes, but they really became those characters, and you see a lot of that in all of the unscripted material we had. There's a big reason why we used a lot of that footage, because it just felt like we were flies on the wall watching real people in a documentary. While you couldn't blame an actor for potentially being frustrated that their low-pressure rehearsal footage ended up on cinema screens around the world, the relaxed authenticity of the end result absolutely speaks for itself. Number 5. Scott Capurro. Mrs. Doubtfire. What self-respecting Robin Williams fan doesn't love his iconic 1993 drama Mrs. Doubtfire? While Williams' sheer presence alone suggests a shoot that was heavy on improv and controlled chaos, according to one of the co-stars, director Chris Columbus employed his own sneaky tactics to get the most naturalistic work out of the entire cast. Comedian Scott Capurro, who played Aunt Jack, the partner of makeup artist Uncle Frank, recently explained the film's unconventional shooting style centered around Robin Williams' spontaneity. He said, "I spent a week on Mrs. Doubtfire and I never knew when the cameras were rolling. Robin would just start and be like, are we filming this? Is this in the movie?" He'd do the scenes as scripted and then toss the script away and try 1,000 other things. Clearly, much of the film's success lies in the director's willingness to give Williams and his co-stars the room to experiment without the formality of action and cut. And just like that, a classic family dramedy was born. Number 4. Most of the cast. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is such an intimate and confined film that there didn't appear to be many opportunities for director Milos Forman to catch his cast unawares. Forman strove for absolute authenticity throughout shooting, even filming the movie at the novel setting of Oregon State Hospital, where cast members were assigned a real patient to shadow in order to get into character. Some of the cast members reportedly even slept on the hospital wards for the sake of further immersion. But because this apparently wasn't enough for the director, he also had regular character workshops during production to help the cast members develop various physical tics and psychological facets of their mentally ill characters. With these workshops taking place during principal photography, Foreman was able to sneakily capture footage of the actors as they went in and out of character without ever telling them that he was shooting, and some of this footage reportedly ended up in the final film. Number 3. George C. Scott. Dr. Strangelove. Much like with the case of First Man, Stanley Kubrick didn't so much film an actor without their knowledge on Dr. Strangelove as he did wildly mislead them about the intent of said filming. In the devilishly entertaining 1964 war satire, George C. Scott played General Buck Turgidson, and according to none other than co-star James Earl Jones, Kubrick effectively tricked Scott into giving a performance that he didn't actually want to. Scott wanted to play the part completely straight, while Kubrick felt that it should be more farcical and over the top. In the end, Kubrick teased a compromise out of Scott by requesting him that he perform a number of outrageous takes as a practice and promised that he would never use them. In a ruse that Scott probably should have saw coming, Kubrick ended up using these sillier takes in the final cut, leaving Scott so irate that he vowed never to work with Kubrick again. And you know what? He didn't. Number 2. Robert Pattinson. Twilight. Even while doing the press rounds for the Twilight movies, Robert Pattinson could scarcely conceal his disinterest in the franchise, and on the DVD commentary for the original film, even admitted that he didn't realize the cameras were rolling during a particularly snoozy take. At roughly the 11-minute mark of the film, Bella enters the biology class and is seated next to Vampire Edward, who was looking more than a little sleepy. Pattinson said this of the scene: "I didn't actually know that they were rolling when we were doing this scene. I was just kind of cold." If the intent to capture Pattinson unawares and milk the awkwardness of his and Bella's first meeting for every drop, then it certainly worked. And number 1, Jim Balton, The Long Goodbye. Robert Altman's 1973 neo-noir classic The Long Goodbye features a supporting appearance by baseball player Jim Balton, who plays Philip Marlowe's ill-fated close friend Terry Lennox. In the recently released biography about Balton's life, Balton, The Life of a Baseball Original, he talks in detail about his experience acting on the film, namely Altman throwing him in the deep end of a major Hollywood movie. Balton was approached for the role by Gould himself, after Stacy Keach fell ill and couldn't play the part. Balton expected to be screen tested and given lines to learn, but Altman did neither, simply requesting his presence on set. Though Balton was given a script, Altman told him to toss it once he showed up, while advising him, "We're just going to have a conversation, say whatever you feel like saying." When Gould arrived on set and started talking to the man, he wasn't even aware that the cameras were rolling, and when asked if they were, Altman promptly shouted, "Cut." Altman then filmed a few more offhand takes of the two actors talking, producing enough improvised banter that he was able to cut a coherent conversation together. You'd never really guess from watching this early scene in question Such is the genius of an all-timer filmmaker like Robert Altman.